During World War II, much of Central Florida was focused on aviation. But in DeLand, one of the military's unsung heroes was chugging along.
We got involved in building United States Army tugboats built on Lake Beresford during World War II and slightly thereafter. They built a total of 42 all-steel tugboats. 29 during the war were completed, and of that 29, we know for a fact that 16 of them actually went to Germany. We found later on that one of the World War II boats ended up in Korea, and 4 of the last run built in 1953 ended up in Vietnam. So our tugboat served 3 wars.
As the tugboats made their way around the world, DeLand remained the perfect place to build.
They wanted to choose a site that was on the St. Johns River, and DeLand was perfect, and it also had a good workforce. They ended up having about 500 people, welders, plumbers, pipe fitters, working at what we call the Beresford Boat Works during World War II and later. They knew if they built them on Lake Beresford, they could float them up to Jacksonville without the engine being installed. And once it was there, they could install the engine, the tugboat would go down into the water another 2 feet, and then they could turn them over to the U.S. Army from that point, which is exactly what they did.
The tug served in many ways, but the boat's resilience is really what set them apart.
The tugboats could push an ammo barge in like they did at Normandy. They could tow stuff up to Intracoastal. They could save lives. They mounted machine guns during wartime and shot down airplanes. The tugboats were everything to everybody, and they knew that they had to have them.
A local group trying to get its hands on a tugboat from World War II that was built right here in Central Florida.
The problem is, it's all the way over in Europe. Fox 35's Sydney Cameron shows us how they plan to get it back here to Florida.
It's our holy grail. It's that rare.
It's this World War II tugboat built in West Volusia County in 1944, then given to the U.S. Army and believed to be used at the D-Day invasion of Normandy.
Discovered half a dozen still existed around the world, and yet this is the only one that still has the original engine, and the original superstructure is largely intact.
But it's stuck nearly 5,000 miles away in Sweden, says history buff Daniel Friend. A couple owns it, but because of the pandemic, they're looking to part with it. Now Friend, who's president of the nonprofit DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated, wants to bring ST479 home after 77 years.
This is the last of only 29 tugboats built on Lake Beresford during World War II by people in West Volusia and the DeLand area.
The U.S. Army used tugboats built on U.S. coastal towns during World War II to move loads all over the world.
If the nonprofit can get the tugboat to make the voyage from Sweden to Volusia County, they want to put it along the St. Johns River, either at Edstone Park or here at Lake Monroe Park. It will be part of a World War II monument to honor the 44 West Volusia service members killed during World War II.
But to move ST479, Friend says the nonprofit needs $300,000 by October 15th. They've raised $15,000.
We're getting strong donations from the community. We need more. We need corporate support.
If the nonprofit can't reach its goal, Friend says they will return any check donations over $100, but he's hoping he won't have to. Sydney Cameron, Fox 35 News.
Well, a piece of history making its return. A World War II era tugboat created in DeLand will soon be back in Volusia County. Quite the story here. The boat was just brought back to the U.S. from Europe.
The project more than a year in the making. News 6's Molly Reed shows us how leaders are preparing this piece of the past for its future.
DeLand City Commission started their conversations this morning about where the tugboat could go now that it's back in the U.S. Right now, their hope is to try to put it in a park near the river, but first it's going to be a matter of getting it to DeLand.
It's a completely unknown part of American World War II history. The tug that's coming back is the only one to ever return home out of the 550 U.S. Army World War II ST tugboats.
And its name is the ST Tiger, one of 29 of those tugboats built in a factory on Lake Beresford in DeLand. Dan Friend, president of the DeLand Historic Trust, says it was likely used in Normandy.
To build on the docks off of the the French coast to recover bodies. I mean, there were so many things. The tugs were essential.
Friend started research on the tugboats decades ago, even creating a website about them. About a year ago, he got a call from a couple in Sweden. They had the Tiger and would give it to him, but he had to pay for transport. The group started raising money. Then what he calls an anonymous angel came along.
Who said, I will give you $200,000 to bring the boat home to Jacksonville. And after that, you're on your own.
On July 10th, it was brought back to the U.S. Right now, it's being held outside of Jacksonville. Friend and the other volunteers working on it will know next week if it can come down by itself.
We're going to bring her home on her own power. We're 90% certain. It's a diesel. And those old diesels, after 20 years, they crank right up.
How soon it gets to DeLand also depends on funding. The DeLand Historic Trust is fundraising again for paint, transportation, and monument costs. But Friend says one way or another, the Tiger is coming home.
It goes past the city of DeLand. This is the only U.S. Army ST tugboat to ever come back to America, to the place where it was built. The only one. That's extraordinary.
In DeLand, Volusia County, I'm Molly Reed getting results, News 6.
He's worked in real estate. He's been an educator, but it's in retirement that Dan Friend, president of the nonprofit DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated, is making history. West 2's Claire Metz reports Friend is closing in on his dream to bring a World War II tugboat made in DeLand back to DeLand.
This is the only U.S. Army ST tugboat to ever come back to America.
And this is it, the ST479, the Tiger, 86 feet long, 23 feet wide, 140 tons of steel. There were 550 STs, small tugs, sent into World War II, 29 of them made in DeLand's Lake Beersford area, including the Tiger. Dan Friend believes it was built in time to be used in Normandy.
90% probability they used every one they could get over there that was built in time. They had to have them to build on the docks off of the French coast, to recover bodies. I mean, there were so many things.
Friend's passion for all things military, he's also the city's military curator, led him to discover the Tiger in private ownership in Sweden. The owners offered it to Dan, but he had to raise $200,000 to cargo the Tiger across the Atlantic.
I found an angel, a local patriotic angel, who said, I will give you $200,000 to bring the boat home to Jacksonville.
The Tiger's now berthed in Green Cove Springs. Dan and others working to clean it up and get the tug to DeLand under its own power, down the St. Johns, across Lake George. Dan says the tug won't be just the pride of the city and county, it's a national treasure. The lone tug to return from battle, Dan Friend, its warrior.
I'm known to be tenacious about things, and I just kept plugging along and talking to people, and it happened.
Though his angel, the anonymous donor, did the lion's share, getting that tug back to the States, Dan Friend says he's now working through his nonprofit, the DeLand Historic Trust, Inc., to finish the job, get the tug back to DeLand and into a static monument. In DeLand, Volusia County, Claire Metz, West 2 News.
Getting results.
Earlier this month, we told you about the efforts to bring a piece of history back to Central Florida.
And these tugboats were created locally and sent across the Atlantic to help fight World War II.
What's even more surprising, they were built inland just off the St. Johns River near DeLand. Matt Austin has the story of one man's quest to bring one home.
The port at Green Cove Springs in Clay County is a resting stop for ships from far and wide. Many with stories of better times, but none with the history.
It's older than anything here, for sure.
Of this latest arrival.
You know, there's nothing here that compare to a boat that was in Europe and in the war.
Moored at the end of Pier 1 is the tugboat known as Tiger.
We're on ST479 Tiger, a U.S. Army small harbor tug. Built during World War II.
And thanks to Dan Friend, ST479 Tiger,
it is amazing,
is coming home.
And they started up within 6 months of Pearl Harbor. They were building tugboats on Lake Beersford and DeLand.
The country was united in the war effort, and an Orlando company that normally made farm equipment was contracted to build tugboats. A total of 29 were built for the Army on the shores of Lake Beersford. Small Tug 479 was one of them.
And more than likely, it was built in time to serve in Normandy, to help the invasion effort to build the Mulberry docks off of the coast of Omaha Beach that were so vital, so crucial to our victory at the Normandy invasion.
And that's what makes this tug so special.
This is absolutely original.
To Dan Friend.
From World War II.
And it's why he traveled across the globe to bring it back.
We refer to this as a quest to return ST479.
And it has been quite a journey. Friend tracked the boat down to a canal in Sweden, where it had been for more than 20 years.
It was a working boat. And that's how she survived. To me, and I like old things, it's like finding a 200-year-old flintlock musket that's never been messed with. The wood's funky and it's rusty, but it's real, it's original.
Real, original, and in need of repair. But Friend is up for the challenge.
I mean, we've got a long way to go.
In fact, this retired history teacher is now an expert in World War II tugboats.
Here is the chain steering.
But it wasn't always that way.
I have to be honest, I was a landlubber. I'm learning everything I can about these tugboats, and I know a lot more than most people do, but I'm still a landlubber asking questions about how does that work?
After a successful fundraising effort, last month, ST479 made it back to the port of Jacksonville.
I feel like this is worth doing.
Its story and Dan's, now one in the same.
It will certainly end up being my legacy, one way or the other. If it sinks out in the river tomorrow, it'll still be my legacy.
Matt Austin, Getting Results, News 6.
Friend says the plan is to first paint the boat and eventually display it as part of a memorial in West Volusia County. That was just a beautifully done story. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing that they were able to find it, and just
Yes.
even the thought of trying to get it back here is amazing.
Yes, it is.
So hopefully we can get it all sorted out, and maybe a piece of history will always stay in Volusia County.
He's going to do it. I feel he can.
For sure.
History is coming full circle. A World War II era tugboat created here in Central Florida will soon be brought home.
The ST Tiger was supposed to be back in DeLand by November, but the hurricanes postponed the trip. News 6's Molly Reed has an update on the work it's taking to get the boat back here and what those behind the project hope to see come from it.
After some delays, the organization behind getting the Tiger back here to DeLand says it will officially be back on January 15th. But they say they also need to raise some more money and collect donations to get it set up once it is here.
The boat's in Astor, Florida, after coming 4,900 miles from Stockholm, Sweden.
And soon, Dan Friend with the DeLand Historic Trust says the ST Tiger will make its final leg of the journey home.
It's like a completely unknown chapter of World War II history, sailing home after 78 years.
The Tiger was one of 29 of these tugboats built in a factory on Lake Beersford in DeLand for World War II.
They made over 550 U.S. Army World War II ST tugboats for harbor use all around the world in World War II.
Friend started research on the tugboats decades ago, even creating a website about them. In early 2021, he got a call from a couple in Sweden. They had the Tiger and wanted to know if he wanted it.
I found 6 boats around the world. 5 of them had been completely rebuilt and butchered, and they were just basically the hulls. This one was intact.
Friend and the Historic Trust collected almost $300,000 in donations to bring the Tiger back to the U.S. In July of this year, it traveled back to America from Sweden. Friend hoped it would be back in DeLand in November, but the hurricanes pushed that back.
We found a good location for it right across from Edstone Park, where the water's deep enough and out of the way enough for us to leave her there for a little while.
Friend says they're still talking with city leaders in different parts of Volusia County to find a permanent spot for it. But he says now that they've cleaned her up, they're going to need to raise even more money to turn her into the memorial.
Extreme expenses involved. I think we have to raise at least another $200,000 to $300,000.
Now, if you are interested in donating, I'm putting all that information up on our website, clickorlando.com. Just look for this story. In DeLand, Volusia County, I'm Molly Reed, Getting Results, News 6.
This World War II tugboat will soon be on display in Volusia County following a massive effort to get it home.
The boat's in Astor, Florida, after coming 4,900 miles from Stockholm, Sweden.
Dan Friend, a retired teacher and history buff, says says the boat was built in West Volusia County in 1944. It was then given to the U.S. Army and believed to be used in the D-Day invasion of Normandy. The Army used the tugboats to move loads all over the world. Friend says having one back into land would be a rare sight.
None of them ever came home back to where they were built. It's like a completely unknown chapter of World War II history, sailing home after 78 years.
Friend led a major fundraising effort to get the tugboat from Sweden to Jacksonville. It's now in Astor, and the goal is to get it to DeLand on January 15th. The next step is to find a permanent site.
We found a good location for it right across from Edstone Park, where the water's deep enough and out of the way enough for us to leave her there for a little while.
And Friend has bigger plans for the final site, hoping to make it a place rich in history for West Volusia.
We do have interesting plans developing for more than one monument to be built in the same location with wherever Tiger ends up going.
In DeLand, Vicki Carr, Fox 35 News.
10 years ago, we used to sit here having coffee, watching telly, you know. This was part of our home. This was sort of our apartment in the middle of Stockholm. So when we had to go in, Em had to go into work, we'd drive down, we'd spend a couple of weeks on site.
Welcome back tonight. A World War II tugboat originally built in DeLand is finally back in Florida. The boat was towed all the way from Sweden. West 2's Liv Johnson shows us how it finally made its way back to Florida and what members of the community want to see next.
It's been a long journey for ST479, the Tiger. It's been to Europe and back. It fought in World War II, and now it's the only U.S. Army ST tugboat to make its way back to where it was built. Now, the people who made this happen want to make sure it finds its forever home in Volusia County.
This boat is priceless. We intend to make it a national monument.
For Dan Friend, this project is personal. He's a former history teacher and the current president of DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated. He found out about the 150-ton tugboat ST479, the Tiger, more than a decade ago. He's been trying to get it home ever since.
I was amazed to find out that the boat still had the original engine and superstructure. It's unheard of.
Getting the boat was no easy feat. The Tiger, which was used during the Normandy invasion and serviced along the English Channel, eventually ended up being privately owned by a couple in Sweden. Friend says a generous donor gave $250,000 to help transport it back to the U.S. For the last several months, it's been in Jacksonville and then Astor. Jerry Vandenboom is one of dozens of people from Astor who traveled with the Tiger on Sunday to watch it get back to DeLand.
It's living history. That is history.
Tiger tug to 44 bridge tender. We are getting fired up and going to be underway here in a little bit.
And the job's not done yet. Dan Friend, Ken Lathrop, and Mayor of DeLand, Chris Cloudman, want to make the Tiger a national monument.
A lot of the people that built this gave their lives up to the effort, and we need our county commissioners to help us make that happen. They're the ones that control the park areas that this would fit right into as a World War II memorial.
The plan is to keep the Tiger in Lake Beresford until there is a permanent spot to make it a monument. In Volusia County, I'm Liv Johnson, West 2 News.
Welcome back. A historic tugboat has finally made its way home to DeLand after a long but worthwhile journey. The 140-ton boat was built in Central Florida and used in World War II. News 6's Jerry Askin was there for the historic homecoming.
Even hours before the historic World War II tugboat made its way back to DeLand Sunday,
We got here about 7:15.
people camped out in excitement, anticipating the boat's final voyage back home to DeLand.
And to have it come back to its original building place is kind of cool.
Craig Walker is a U.S. Navy veteran. He and his Rotary Club members were at Edstone Park along the St. Johns River early Sunday, prepping snacks for the crowd of people who showed up to see the warboat for themselves.
I'm excited to see it get down here. My father-in-law helped build these things.
We found Tiger with its original World War II engine still in place, the original superstructure still in place.
Dan Friend is president of the DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated and said the boat was built in DeLand in 1944 and was in Europe during the World War II era. He's made it his mission to move the more than 140-ton boat back home to DeLand. Last year, it finally returned to the U.S. thanks to a generous donation that paid for its transport in Jacksonville, but it faced a minor setback after getting stuck in Astor in the mud earlier this year.
We knew it would come up, and it did. And we're bringing it home to get it into a secure location before we have another hurricane like Ian.
And this boat really has a lot of history, and that's why people here in DeLand are trying to find ways to preserve it. I'm told there's even a possibility of making the boat into a memorial.
We're going to have a monument dedicated to all the builders and crews of all the U.S. Army STs in World War II.
A homecoming that many say is so good to see.
I've always been excited about it, and the story is just fantastic.
In DeLand, I'm Jerry Askin, getting results, News 6.